Thank you so much for coming today. Welcome to the FCC. Before we get started, just a reminder to please silence your phones. And I also wanted to let you know about a few other events we have coming up. It's a very busy couple of months here. Starting with this Friday, we are very fortunate to be hosting jazz legend Wynton Marsalis here on his birthday for a Q&A. That will be live streamed, and it is still available for booking if you're interested. And then on Monday, we have another club lunch featuring the 16-year-old winner of the World Pokemon Go Championships. So very interesting. And then on Tuesday, we have a club lunch, Where is Hong Kong Headed as a Startup Capital, which should be a really interesting discussion. And then coming up on October 28th, which is the Monday after next, we'll be just in time for the US election. We'll be screening a remastered version of the 1976 film Network, moderated by our own Jennifer Dayton. So please be sure to sign up for that. And yes, lots going on here at the FCC. These are events that are unique to the club. They are a central part of what we do. And I think at each of your seats, you should have a little membership pamphlet available. So if you are not a member and you enjoy coming to these events, please do consider applying for membership because you do not have to be a journalist to join the Foreign Correspondence Club. So if you're interested, please take that with you. Or if you are a member, please pass it on to someone else. So moving on to today's event, we'll be speaking today about neurodiversity awareness. So thank you very much to our speakers for joining us today. I will give a brief introduction, and then we'll have a bit of a Q&A, and then we'll open it up to the audience as well. So please be thinking about your questions. So starting here, we have Koa Tran, who's a freelance writer and journalist who formerly practiced law in Canada and then came to Hong Kong to build a new career in publishing and writing. He's a former social impact editor at Tatler Asia, where he covered sustainability, charities, and diversity. Noelle Sinclair is the CEO of Diverse Minds. She is an autism and ADHD advocate who leverages her lived experience and corporate background to promote neurodiversity in the workplace and help organizations understand, support, and utilize neurodivergent talent. And finally, we have Jonathan Mock, who is a passionate advocate for neurodiversity, who was diagnosed with ADHD and ASD in 2019 at the age of 37. Since then, he has actively shared his personal journey to increase awareness and foster understanding of neurodivergent conditions, appearing last year at TEDx CUHK and in various local media interviews. So let me start by asking, does everyone here know what we mean when we say neurodiversity? Is everyone pretty aware already? Or let's do a quick definition. Who would, Noelle, do you want to explain?
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
It's working? Okay, excellent. Yeah. So this might surprise you. Those of you who have heard of neurodiversity, this definition might be a little surprising. But neurodiversity is a concept that refers to the immense variation in human nervous systems across our population. And what you'll notice there is that it doesn't actually refer to those of us who are specifically autistic or ADHD. What it's pointing out is that there are cognitive differences in humans. And our nervous systems, which include our brain, spinal cord, and nerves, means that it's more than just about things going on in our head. It's about how we're experiencing the world around us. So it's how we take in sensory information, pass it up from the spinal cord or directly into the brain, and then how we process it, and then the reverse. So question, have you ever seen perhaps an autistic child do this? Maybe on TV? Well, they're doing that because, and I'll end with this, I won't make this a 5-hour definition. The reason I'm mentioning this is to point out it's not just in the brain. So when you see a child do this who is autistic, what is happening is that the sensory information that is coming in is overwhelming this individual. We as autistics, 90% of us have this difficulty with our senses, and it often goes unknown because most people focus on more cognitive aspects.
Koa or Jonathan, did you have anything to add to that?
I think the definition of neurodiversity changes over time. We start with autism, and then now we have ADHD, we have dyslexia, dyslexia. I think the key point is, as time goes by, neurodiversity is more about one's identity.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you. I think what helps me understand neurodiversity is taking it in a broader and broader context. It's not just learning disabilities, it's not just quirks or whatever, it's broader and broader.
Absolutely. In the 1990s, when this term was developed, it was developed by a group of autistics who had just discovered the internet and started to communicate with each other. And they decided that, look, we've been using this term biodiversity for years, and biodiversity was never a scientific term. It was a social movement term to bring awareness to the fact that we are affecting, as humans, biodiversity, and there's value in protecting species, and that the more diverse an ecosystem is, the stronger that ecosystem is. And the same for the concept of neurodiversity. It doesn't specifically apply to an autistic person or someone who's ADHD. The point was to drive awareness that those of us who are neurodivergent we face biases, discrimination, stigma, and if the world were in some people's hands, people like myself and Jonathan and Koa would be taken out of existence. And so in the 1990s, that was the feeling that, look, we have to appreciate the cognitive diversity amongst all of us because we are bringing something valuable to humanity.
Yes, and we're going to get into more about what that is. So I wanted to spend a bit of time, give you each some time to talk about your own personal experiences and how receiving a diagnosis or doing advocacy work has impacted you personally. Koa, do you want to start?
Sure. So I have ADHD, and my diagnosis kind of came a little randomly around 2 years ago, and I was seeing a therapist around having problems with anxiety and career direction. My background is in law, but then I gradually transitioned to writing content, and I think it has always left a bit of a stigma, so I wanted to dig more into it, and through therapy, through talking about it with friends, it was suggested to me that maybe I should, like the way I explain things or the way I talk, maybe I should get checked for ADHD, and that's what I did. And so that was a bit odd because I came into therapy hoping that I could solve my anxiety, and then I came out of it with like another issue. But I did get diagnosed, and I was put on medication. And the first time I took Ritalin, it was a life-changing experience. It kind of made me, and I'm sure that Noel and Jonathan will have the exact same story because I've heard it from so many people. The first thought I had was, oh, this is what it feels like to be normal, to have a quiet mind. And it's almost like it's almost like an awakening, like almost like tears flows down my eyes. It's like, oh, I'm feeling something. And so through the next month, I worked with my doctor and my therapist to fine-tune the dosage and fine-tune the type of medication because there's a lot of different medications that someone with ADHD can take. And there's dosages, there's how they like the release of the medication to be taken. But I guess through going all this process, I found out a lot of things. First, that I did not have anxiety, or chronic anxiety as I thought I did. It was just anxiety that was driven by ADHD. It was because I was missing deadline, that I was not performing as well as I wanted to at work, and then the imposter syndrome and all those thoughts kept cycling through my head that was kind of caused anxiety. So solving one problem actually solved the other problems as well. And ever since then, I got a bit more curious about mental health, ADHD, and started looking into it. And I came to a place in my career where I was writing about diversity, and I thought, we need to write about this. We need to bring this to attention because it appears in so many facets of life. It appears from early education, but also it's a struggle for me to talk about it, even address it with my own family, so my family doesn't really know this. And to me, it's indicative of the fact that there's still a stigma around such issues, and it sparked a curiosity that I've been ever since trying to learn about, trying to talk to people about, and gotten really, really interested in covering. And I think that's where I am right now.
Thank you. And Noelle, what about you?
Well, I was diagnosed late in life, so I'm 50 now, but I was diagnosed first as autistic right around 40 because my older son was diagnosed as autistic. A few years ago, I was diagnosed late in life with ADHD. These things tend to go hand in hand. If you have one, you typically have another. I think what we'll find in the future that these are really apart. These aren't independent of each other, that a lot of these neurodevelopmental conditions are just part of one large spectrum. The difference it made for me was, similarly, it was life-changing. The first time understanding that I was autistic, I finally understood why I finished, I started university young. 15, I was in the corporate world, very successful right off. From anybody looking at me at my life, they would have said, oh, she's very successful. She has a family, she has children, she has a wonderful job, she's a great career. And I really was on the verge of suicide. It was going to happen at any minute, essentially. But what had happened was, it's intersectional, right? We tend to think of people like myself. I don't fit the stereotype of being autistic or even ADHD. So instead, I was diagnosed with depression, which also, depression and anxiety go hand in hand, because living in a world that's not meant for you, the world, the way that you guys function, if you're neurotypical, which is what we call you, if you're not ADHD or autistic, this world is just not built for us. And I find that every day, up until that point, I got to that point, was a struggle. I was masking, I was trying to overcome the immense sensory experience I had. Autistics, we can have difficulty communicating. I don't communicate the same way as others. I don't do small talk as much as I do talking about a topic. I don't do office politics. It's a very difficult here in the Asian culture where people will say one thing but actually mean something else, which for those of us who are autistic, But so these diagnoses gave me a weight off of my shoulders. For the first time in my entire life, I finally understood why I was different and that it was okay. And that so much of what had made me successful in school, in university, in the corporate world was because I was neurodivergent. There were things and talents that I had that others didn't. And I luckily just happened to leverage those. Not all autistics are lucky enough in that sense. So my diagnosis late in life it definitely saved my life, and it was never negative. It was a positive for me.
And Jonathan, you were also diagnosed late in life. Did you have a similar experience?
I would rather say yes. So maybe let me give you a bit of context about how I decided to get myself diagnosed. As Jen was saying, it was 2018. I got a new job, and literally, when I first entered the office, I felt that I was already in the black hole. So I checked in on time at 9 a.m. and then I left my desk at 1 p.m. I got lunch and then returned to my desk at 2 p.m. And then as soon as the clock reached 6, I left the office. And then I did the same for 2 months, and I decided, and I realized that, and then one day I didn't really want to go to work. I decided to get the support from a general practitioner, and he diagnosed me with adjustment disorder, because moving to a new job could be very, very stressful. And then as I look back my past, when I was a primary school kid, I was described as a hardworking student, but someone could be out of sight, out of mind. And when I was a high school student, and then there were classes focusing on mathematics, chemistry, physics, my mind just ran blank. And then I entered a community college, and I was choosing between history and English. I decided not to major in English at the end because I had to study linguistics. And I decided to major in history. But then there was a class about historiography, and I managed to get A. And I explained how my mind functioned when I was a little kid, from the time that I knew how the world really worked, to my interaction with others. And the psychiatrist diagnosed me with ADHD. I didn't tell anyone at first, and then at the end, because of work performance, I disclosed my ADHD to my employer. And because I was working in the public body, I was requested to be diagnosed by another psychiatrist. And then the other psychiatrist interviewed my mom and me for 3 hours. And then she decided that I would be having both autism and ADHD. And then this is what I tell people. I tell people that this is what I call buy one, get one. So I thought that I would be only having ADHD, but it turns out that I would be having autism, so it means that I have 2 A's. What I can say is, first of all, because of my brother, he autistic with severe intellectual disability. So autism is not new for my family. But without that diagnosis, I would not have learned that medically we don't have Asperger anymore. It's already a part of autism spectrum. And then since then, for the last few years, these are the key takeaways for now. First of all, to empower neurodivergence, we need allyship. We also need to get a variety of help. I got the help from psychiatrists, from clinical psychologists, from counselors, and from social workers. And I remember attending a class organized by the Men's Center. And I was working with the social worker about how to talk about my neurodivergent conditions, if I got a date in the future. But it was a good experience. But the social worker told me that, why don't you learn about your neurodivergent condition first? So the first thing is about self-awareness. And through the self-awareness, I learned about how to love myself, and then it helps me to kickstart my advocacy work. And then for my advocacy work, I learned about several things. The first thing is, usually through my social media, sometimes I got contacted by the people that I don't know, and they would like to talk about their neurodivergent conditions. They have something in common. First of all, 90% of them are women. Second of all, they ask about the neurodivergent conditions. And then it got me thinking that, well, yes, neurodivergent conditions could exist in both men and women, biological men and women. But why do we pay so much focus on men? The second thing is, this is what I did not expect, because let's say I was interviewed by Yahoo lately, and then you turn to the point that on street, or even when I'm waiting for a bus, I could be stopped by the people that I don't know. And then they ask me this, hey, are you the Jonathan talking about neurodiversity all the time? So I did not really expect this to happen, but then it got me thinking that, so first of all, although we have statistics over different neurodivergent conditions, numbers cannot tell the whole story. Second of all, I got the support that I need, but then what if you are a woman, and what if you are a member of the ethnic minorities, or what if you come from more marginalized backgrounds? Where can you get the help that you need?
So that kind of leads into my next question, which is how the approach to neurodivergent conditions or awareness of neurodiversity has changed in Hong Kong over time. Do you feel like it's getting better, or what still needs to happen? Jonathan, do you want to start?
I mean, let me add a few points. I believe that I'm very pleased to see that some of the local organizations are they are trying to localize concept of neurodiversity, and I believe that's great. I mean, say in my personal advocacy work, most of my audience come from professional backgrounds or come from upper middle classes backgrounds. They at least they knew about what neurodiversity means, but for the concept to be further populated in the community, it takes advocacy. And I'm happy that there are people in healthcare and medical community that are happy to work together, and they're also trying to see what they can do to bring in the voices of the neurodivergence in the advocacy work. And I see more increasing awareness that, yes, we need the medical knowledge, we need social welfare knowledge, but at the end of the day, how we need to create a new affirmative environment for people. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is, it's more about education. Yes, we have less kids than before, but we have more kids diagnosed with different learning needs. How may we work together to destigmatize the call for support? And how may we work together to empower educators to be ready to teach the neurodivergence? Say in my case, because when I got trained to be a teacher 10 years ago, and I wasn't required to teach students with special learning needs. It was just an elective. But say we have more students, we have a wide range of learners, how may we help the educators to feel confident and ready to work in a diverse classroom?
Mm-hmm. And Noelle, what changes have you seen?
Well, I've only been here for 3 years, so I moved here during COVID, so yay for me. That was a great decision. But what I can say is my experience is predominantly related to working with large global organizations. So as an example, I work with EY, helping develop their strategy for how to do neurodiversity in Asia Pacific. That was one of the bigger projects that I started with almost 3 years ago. And today, I have seen so much change in the past 3 years, at least with these Western large organizations. And to give you an example, I work with an organization that is called ANBA, ANBA.com. Feel free to look it up. This is a volunteer organization for business leaders. So we've brought together, the founding members are myself, my company, which is Diverse Minds, but it was spearheaded by Herbert Smith Freehills. Our other founding members are from HSBC, Standard Charter, Bloomberg, Morgan Stanley, Société Générale, although I've been told I don't pronounce that correctly. Société Générale. So what we've been working on in the past year is this group of people wants to bring business leaders together and say, how can you make your organizations more approachable and more supportive for your workforce? Or there are neurodivergent individuals already at these organizations. And their take is that they want to work on this as a way to, it's not just a social good. It's a way to do business better. It's a way to drive innovation, and that it's something that Asia needs in the business community. It's something that can spur ideas that can make us better problem solvers. And it's not just about neurodiversity, it's about cognitive diversity. This is about all of us. How can we all, as humans, come together and work better in a workplace? I'll end on this. M. Moser, the architectural company, ANBA just was there yesterday to learn about the amazing things that they have been doing for neurodiversity. But one thing that we can take from them, and that I've been taking since I've been working with them for a couple of years now, is that we should be focusing on universal design when we design not just our physical spaces, but when we're designing how we do business. We should be thinking about how do we make this business function in a way that it supports all people as humans, whether you are neurodivergent, whether you're a female, whether you're a male, whether you're trans, whether you're young, whether you're old. How do we design what we're doing for humans? So So I see many positive things, at least within this genre of business individuals.
Koa, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I didn't grow up in Hong Kong, so I've only been here for 6 years. And my exposure to neurodiversity here is through the lens of the people I talk to, whether that's organizations or entrepreneurs working in the space. And what I've seen is there's a bit more progress being done on the education side rather than the corporate side with special education needs, although the term itself is a bit misleading because it kind of groups everyone into one category, but what I've seen is there's more awareness of it in the early years. So I think it's a positive step, and I think that the work what Noel is doing with ANBA and with our organization is trying to bring the corporate world and the DE&I and HR departments like up to speed with that, because there's no real connection between that. Someone who goes through school with special education needs, they graduate, they're entering the same neuronormative world as everyone else with little guidance. So I think that's where I think Hong Kong is at right now.
Can we expand a bit on what companies can do to support neurodivergent employees, and also what a neurodivergent workforce brings and how companies benefit from neurodiversity in the workplace? Noel, do you want to start?
Well, the first thing a company can do is just to be open, that the way things are done may not be the best way, and that you are not necessarily going to see barriers that affect me. So I'll give you an example. The hiring process for someone who is autistic tends to cut us out usually before we even get to an interview. By the time we get to the interview, we are usually, no matter what our skills are, interviews we don't do well with. We're very literal. We're not always very social. I do okay speaking, as you can tell. You can't shut me up. I think that's part of my ADHD. I do okay with interviews, but I'm the rarity. So we find that autistics have an unemployment rate. People just like myself, it's a stereotype that we're unable to work. Most of us have average to above average IQs. Our unemployment rate globally is around 80%. I have 2 different graduate degrees. I have a slew of undergraduate degrees. But if I were to attempt to go back to the corporate world, which I wouldn't because I prefer to own my own business, which many neurodivergent people do because it's so difficult to fit in a corporate setting. So being open to the fact that there are barriers that you may not see is one of the first things you can do. And that means that if you start including a diverse group of people when you're developing your policies, when you're developing your systems, into that process and getting their feedback, then you're going to get a bigger picture of where people are struggling. And you'll notice that I didn't just start right away with training. So some of these is the mindset of openness.
Koa, what do you think?
I would agree too. I think from talking to a lot of HR departments, one thing that I've noticed that I think makes a big difference, that could be a big difference, but it's still in the early stages, is even before the hiring process, the job ad itself. I don't know if anyone here has applied to big organizations, and then at the very end of the job ad on LinkedIn, there's a big disclaimer about how the organization welcomes everyone and is an inclusive organization, this huge blurb at the end here. I think that is a clumsy first step, but it is a first step nonetheless towards making the job ad more open to people who might be intimidated by requirements such as needs to be very proactive, needs to be very extroverted. Sometimes individuals with neurodiversity see that and then they shy off of even applying when they do have the hard skills required for that job. And I think that huge blurb is like the corporate language like thing that they have to put in to say that no, we are not all that, we welcome everyone. But I think it's a bit of a symbolic first step, and I think in the coming years, I expect to see that being digested into a language that's more readable to everyone, and words like extroverted, being very social, to be perhaps removed from hard requirements in jobs. Of course, every employer wants to have very outgoing and friendly employees, but I think HR departments are going to work more to maybe fine-tune or make that, find the right language to make those, the job descriptions a bit more inclusive.
The other thing I would say on this is if you're serious about doing something for neurodiversity or cognitive diversity or any form of DE&I, is that you don't just jump in. The biggest mistake that I see, even EY, is that people don't go in with an idea of the purpose that they want to achieve. So whether you're a volunteer or you work in HR, it's not about just jumping in. It is have a clear purpose of what it is that you want to achieve, and then go about it strategically, which is how does this align to the business? What is a business value? Because at the end of the day, people will say things like, this is just social justice. Well, yes, it is social justice, but if you want change in an organization, you need to demonstrate value. And if you want support and you want funding, then you do that by showing and demonstrating how you're bringing value, and it absolutely can be done. These two things, value and business and social justice, are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they go together very well. Most people in the DE&I space aren't trained on how to approach business strategically. So if you're very serious, that is my first advice to you, would be to not only be open, the second is to look at doing what it is that you want to achieve with purpose.
And Jonathan,
Yes.
what would you say?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, again, let me add several points. I would say, first of all, for businesses, this is what I observe. For companies reported to sell, yes, I have seen them making progresses in neurodiversity. But when it's come to training, they focus on office staff members. Is there a way to empower frontline staffers about how to support neurodivergent customers? Or in some cases, can you try to make the store neo-inclusive? Yes, it's cool for people in the office to learn to be empowered about how to work with neurodivergent team members. Equally important is make the store look nice so that the neurodivergent folks can come with their loved ones and spend money on your products and services.
And that's another way that the business, you can drive value in your business. If you are providing a service and your business isn't taking in consideration people who are neurodivergent, you are losing customers. I've lost, a Standard Chartered Bank lost me when I tried to go in, and as an autistic person, I actually could not function, and my difficulties with processing sound, I couldn't actually get my application in and did the paperwork, even though I was sitting right across the desk from the individual. Because of so much sound in the environment, I finally just had to stand up and leave. And I work with people at Standard Chartered, so I had to tell them, well, sorry, but you've missed out. And so as Jonathan was saying, it's not only for your internal staff, this is for customers, clients, and at the end of the day, that's a benefit to your business.
Yes, but perhaps I can also add a couple more points. The second point is I have the privilege of working with recruitment agencies, including formerly OJ and then now WISE. And I also serve as a mentor for Hong Kong Polytechnic University. And for most of the companies, when they hire the neurodivergent talent, they tend to focus on university students. But let's say, what if I am a working professional and I get diagnosed at mid-age? Then should I tell or should I tell? Should I not tell? If I tell, then God knows what's going to happen. Will there be end of office politics? So then it means that we need a clear policies. And equally important is company can show success cases of neurodivergent team members. What I notice is for people that feel safe to talk about their neurodivergent conditions, for example, Jonathan Scotty of Hong Kong Bank, they have already achieved certain career success. They are leaders in the companies. And then when they disclose their neurodivergent conditions, people believe that, well, that's great because you managed to navigate your neurodivergent conditions. What if I am just a junior mid-level employees, God knows what's going, then I don't know what's going to happen. And then last but not least is I also know, I also work with a local NGO. It trains neurodivergent young people to work in the IT sector. And when it comes to there are employers willing to hire neurodivergent talents. But when it comes to the interview, they think about interview questions from the defensive perspective. They just make sure that the staff members are not going to be accused of disability discrimination. Then you got them, for the interview questions, how may we make them transparent and providing chance for the neurodivergent talents to showcase themselves?
I want to make sure we have some time for Q&A from the audience, if we have any. Are there any questions that anyone would like to ask? Yes.
Thank you all so much for being so open. I'm mother of a 32-year-old autistic son who copes very well in the real world. We're all volunteers for Riding for Disabled here. And I'm just interested on your take. We have a lot of 6-year-old children turning up with a diagnosis already of ADHD or autistic spectrum disorder, and they seem to be stuck in a one-way track without having the mentors and people like you to talk to. Is there anything we can do as a charity to help these kids? Because I think some of them are on a track that they don't need to be on.
Absolutely. Well, I'm not going to toot my own horn. Sorry, I'm from Oklahoma. Can you tell? No. So please look me up on LinkedIn and connect with me, because Diverse Minds is starting an online community that's going to offer not only online education and access to therapists and coaches, but it's also going to be open to parents and caregivers. So anybody who is interested in kids, for example, please join the wait list, because we want to build this up. And what do they need? You're absolutely right. Young kids need a sense of identity. It's very difficult to have a sense of identity if you never get to meet anyone else like you. If you don't have role models that you can look up to and say, oh, there's someone like me who achieved something, it's very difficult. It can be very disheartening. So building up a community here in Hong Kong, getting adult autistics and ADHDers to make contact with younger kids. I do this on the English side of things. So, for example, the Harbor School has a number of ADHD students that we will have a lunchtime where the kids can just come in and have pizza and talk to me and just have, or I'll bring in one of my interns from a university. She's much cooler than I am. She's very cool. So they need a community connection. They need that. It's incredibly important. My oldest son, who is autistic, is 30 years old. And I get asked all the time now from parents, because I was told when he was a child that, oh, he'll be lucky if he finishes high school. Well, not only did he finish high school, he did amazing. He supports himself. He has an amazing career. And people ask me, well, so what did you do? I think this is important, because I didn't know I was autistic, and I didn't know he was autistic when I raised him. I never put a limit to what he could do. I never assumed he was incompetent. I just assumed that I needed to give him as many skills as I could, and give him exposure and opportunity to grow. And I think the labels are great because it helps us understand, but if you're seeing kids that are going down one road, it means that label is a restriction. It means that people are looking at that person saying they're limited in their competence. And I gotta tell you, with kids, that's a ridiculous notion. You have to give them opportunity to grow and to change and to experience things. When you don't put that limit on a kid, there's no harm in saying in not doing that. Because when you don't put a limit on the child, anything for them is possible. They grow. There's no longer that limitation. So when a kid see, as you've just described, that's usually the scenario, is that the stigma, the bias, have led to those limitations. So again, a long-winded way. So connect with me on LinkedIn. Join the wait list. I can also probably connect with me later, but there's other ways that we can sort of bring people together.
Yeah, I believe that, thanks for your question. I believe there are 2 points. The first point is, it's really about creating a supportive environment for the neurodivergent kids to be able to mingle with each other or even to interact with neurotypical kids. So the way that is about, at the end of the day, it's also about building the relationships. Just because you're neurodivergent doesn't mean that you are useless, you're incompetent. You have your strengths, yes, you also have the challenges, but at the end of the day, it's also about how you can navigate the world. Yeah, because sidetracking a bit, I believe that the reason why parents of neurodivergent kids are so worried about their kids, because some of the parents worry that my kids won't be able to achieve the same socio-economic status. So that's why they want to push the kids, they want to fix the kids. But the reality is all the kids have different talents. And this is what I tell people. One day there were parents. The parents are very, very successful. They have very, very good income. But then the kid is neurodivergent. And the kid is only interested in art, music, culture. And then the parents ask about what they could do. And then this is what I said to the parents. I said bluntly, in Cantonese there's a saying, the daddy earns the money and the son enjoys spending the money. Just because you have the money, that's why your kid can pursue art, music, or anything that is not necessarily financially rewarding. So, in other words, it's also about respecting your kid's talent and build and use that. And by understanding your kids, then the parents can build a relationship, and the quality of that relationship will be crucial for affecting your kids' social, mental, and physical well-being.
Cool. Anything to add?
I don't have anything to add. I think I agree with both Jonathan and Noelle. And the community is very important, even as an adult. So I can't imagine how important it must be as a kid to also talk to other people that he or she can relate to.
We have a friend of mine and Jonathan, actually Koa, I think you both have joined it. We have an adult neurodiversity networking event that we do 4 or 5 times a year. And one of the last times that I did it, 2 young university students who were just getting ready to go start their careers in law came up to me and said, this is the first time in my entire life that I was in public and met another adult who admitted being autistic. And I thought, oh my goodness, here's someone who's in their 20s, who's never been able to just hang out with somebody similar and be themselves. And that is not healthy for any human. So the least that we can do is to provide more support in open spaces for our neurodivergent individuals.
Any other questions from the audience?
Over here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, this question is for Koa. I'd like to know when you're tasked with a deadline or a project, how do you approach that? Is it very different, or what have you learned about how to approach these things?
I think that's the $1 million question.
Thanks. I'm asking for many, many students.
I still struggle with it. I still struggle with deadlines. I think managing expectations is the most important leading up to it. Being honest to yourself, that's something that is that I struggle too, because and I realize now, learning all this is part of masking. You think you can do more than what you can, but you cannot. And so it's always adjusting. Oh, I'm sure I can do 1,000 words a day. No. Let's start with 500 and let's see where that brings me, and then adjust. But I think it's on a case-by-case basis, and it depends on the individual, and it depends. Everyone would have a different strategy, but managing expectations on deliverables, I think, is is very important, and lots of communications. I had a manager who was very open to the idea of like just talking about the fact that, oh, I have ADHD and then like I'm running out of medication, so things might happen. If you are managing someone with deadlines or something like that, I think it's very good to make them feel welcome, that they're able to talk about those things with you without having any repercussions from it. And I think that's important.
So we are going to have a course on that, an e-learning course on that as well, on Diverse Minds soon. So if you will contact me through LinkedIn, I'll give you a free membership. So I can also speak to that. That's one of my favorite topics. So I studied neuroscience and psychology, and one of the interesting, fascinating things about ADHD is our lack of a concept of time. So for those of us, most of us who are ADHD, this concept of time does not exist for us. And I did not realize this until a few years ago, and I was shocked that, you mean you have an idea of how many, like 5 minutes from now versus an hour versus a day. We don't often have that concept of time. I'll give you an example. How does this manifest? If I have like this event today, I will not be able to do